Welcome, believers. Welcome, you wonderfully weird people. Today, I'm standing on a quiet country lane just outside Winchester. It looks ordinary, peaceful even, but nearly 50 years ago, this exact stretch of road became the centre of one of Britain's most chilling UFO encounters. What you're about to hear didn't happen somewhere distant. It happened right here where we stand, in the quiet countryside of southern England, on an ordinary November evening in 1976. Two people driving along a dark Hampshire road would experience something that would change their lives forever. What they saw, what they encountered, and what followed in the months ahead would become one of the most chilling and controversial UFO cases in British history. Now, this is the story of Joyce Bowles and the Winchester UFO encounter. Now, a routine journey that turns into something else. On the night of November the 14th, 1976, just before 9 p.m, 42-year-old Joyce Bowles and her neighbour, Ted Pratt, were driving toward the village of Chilcombe, just outside Winchester, and it's just over there, right? It was a quiet, uneventful journey until they saw it. A strange glowing orange light hovering low over a field at the roadside, and the field is just there, all right, just by the side of us. At first they thought little of it, but as they continued driving, the light didn't disappear. In fact, it followed them. Now they turned onto a narrow country lane, a place known locally as King's Lynn, and that's exactly where we are now. This is King's Lynn, right now. Sorry, King's Lane. Now Joyce slowed the car, 20, maybe 25 miles per hour. Well, it was fast for this lane, and then something impossible happened. The car suddenly lurched to the right, and the engine revved wildly on its own. And an overwhelming pressure filled the air around them, apparently, as if something unseen was pushing down on the entire world, like an invisible barrier. Now, Joyce struggled to control the car, and the vehicle veered towards the trees. And Ted grabbed the wheel, trying to stop them from crashing. So you can imagine it's a very tense situation. And then the car stopped, just stopped. You know, not gently, not sort of like coastingly stopping, not naturally, all right, but suddenly, as if it was, if it struck something solid, something that wasn't there, okay, an invisible barrier. Now look, if you look behind me, and you can imagine, and I'll move, you can imagine how eerie it was then. Okay, and something happened to their car. It will freak you out, right? But what they saw next would haunt them forever. All right, this cigar-shaped craft hovering just ahead of them. Now, I will show you the field. All right, look, that's the field. Apparently, that's where the cigar-shaped craft was hovering. So you can imagine the situation, can't you? Right, it was hovering just ahead of them. Well, long, metallic, cigar-shaped, floating just above the ground. Beneath it, a strange mist swirled, and inside, figures. In fact, there was 3 of them, and apparently this is the way Joyce explained it. They were seated one behind the other, like a passenger on a bus, and they were just watching them, waiting for something. You know, who knows what? But they were certainly just sitting there observing Joyce and Ted. Then one of them moved. And of course, obviously, the situation is already freaky. You know, they've already had the incident with the car. They've already seen the oval-shaped craft. A figure exited the vehicle and began walking towards the car. Now, you can imagine, can't you? A high-pitched kettle-like whistle sound filled the air. Closer and closer it came. The beings apparently wore a shimmering silver blue suit with no seams and no buttons, almost as if it wasn't clothing at all, but part of the ET, the entity. Now, this is not unusual. If you do follow my YouTube channel, and I suggest you do, right, there are silver suited entities popping up all over 77 and 76. And then it was there at the driver's window. No footsteps, No warning, just there, right, as if it had floated into position. Now Joyce stared into its face. It looked human. Okay, well, at least it wasn't a bug-eyed monster, all right? Almost, she says. It was 6 foot tall, all right? Long blonde hair, like the Pleiadians, but it had a full beard. Now, that's a really weird one. Out of all the experience I've wrote and I've talked about, I've never come across a bearded ET. But she said the eyes, they were bright pink, unnatural. She described it as unblinking. So now we've got an ET with a silver suit on, all right, with long blonde hair like the Pleiadians, but with a beard. Now, apparently, obviously, Joyce felt fear. In fact, she described it as pure, overwhelming terror. But Ted, on the other hand, right, he felt something completely different. He felt calm, well, at peace. You know, basically the opposite of what Joyce was feeling at the time. He actually described it as almost comfort. The figure glanced inside the car and looked at the dashboard, then walked slowly towards the back of the vehicle, and then walking at the back of the vehicle like a policeman, and then it was gone. It was gone like that. It kind of disappeared as quick as it appeared at the window. So the craft vanished and the silence returned. They drove home shaken, like you would, trying to make sense of what just happened. But the story didn't end there. The very next day, the account made the news. First locally, then nationally. And believe me, you don't want that, right? The case spread across Britain. But with the attention came something a little bit more sinister, a little bit more darker. Now, Joyce reckons she received phone calls. A man claiming to be from the government, right? And his message was very simple, very clear and very chilling, right? All he said was, stop talking about what you saw. He called again, kept calling. He called again and again, repeating the same old message. Stop talking about what you saw, repeating the same old warning. Then something even stranger began to happen. For weeks, remember this is 1976, right? Their telephone line remained engaged, even when the receiver was placed back down, as if someone was always listening. Because if you kept your line open at the other end, the other line didn't shut off. Right? The encounters continue. 6 weeks later, December the 30th, 1976, Joyce and Ted returned to the same road. I don't know why I'd avoid that at all costs personally, but I've been down that road. If you live down that road, then maybe you've got no choice but to drive down that road. And they saw it again. The same craft, the same light, the same sound, and again, the car began to shake. The whistling returned, and then darkness. That was it. They blanked out. When they become aware again, they weren't in the car. Okay, you can imagine, can't you? They were inside the craft. This time, on the second sighting, they were abducted. Okay. Now, the room was unlike anything they had ever seen. They described it, and I'm trying to paint a picture here for you. It was cold, metallic, and silent. Okay, so you can put yourself in that situation. You're in a cold, metallic, silent room. 3 figures stood before them. The same beings, apparently, wearing the same suits, now with shining metallic boots. And in the centre of the room, a strange structure. They described it like a giant bottle, wide at the base. Now remember, when we tell abduction stories, they're always a little bit confusing because it's hard to describe stuff. But they say it's wide at the base, narrow at the top, encircled by black and yellow rings. Now, was it a machine? Was it a power source or a propulsion system? Even now, no one knows. And of course you wouldn't know, would you? And then the being spoke, apparently in broken English. Maybe their translator, their universal translator was broken or something, right? In broken English, but clear enough to understand, right? And we mean you no harm, is what they said. Now, they were shown devices, apparently. Charts, they were shown charts, possible maps of stars. So the abduction was in no way physical. Unlike other abductions, Terry Lovelace, he said the very same thing. When he was abducted and he was screaming, they said, stop screaming, you know we don't hurt you, we will let you go. But this time it looks like they were showing them stuff. And then their memory started fading. Then they woke up, back in the car, on a road they didn't recognise. More encounters, more questions over the following months. Now, the encounters continued apparently until May 1977. Joyce saw the craft again, but this time with another witness. What really kind of clarifies the story for me. The being approached once more and arms outstretched, speaking in the broken language again. But whatever it said, Joyce refused to repeat. So what did he say? She said, I understand, but I can't tell any more. I wonder why. Fear? Possibly. A warning? Maybe. Maybe the government did nobble her in the end and she's scared. Or something more disturbing. Now, other witnesses come forward as investigators dug deeper, and they found something remarkable, right? Joyce and Ted weren't alone that day. Multiple people across Hampshire reported similar sightings. Strange orange lights. Hovering crafts. I mean, like I tell you, man, that was a busy old day, 76, 77. Even silver-suited figures. From Horton Heath to Southampton to Alford. Southampton is literally the neighbour. The reports all matched apparently as well. Independent, what's very important, unconnected. They did not know Joyce Bowles in any way, but eerily consistent. Now, this is a case that still divides opinion. So what really happened on that road near Winchester? That lonely road. You can see it. It is quite isolated. Was this a genuine extraterrestrial encounter? Or a psychological experiment? Or a hoax that spiraled out of control? And I'm not buying that one at all. Even within the UFO community, opinions remain divided. But one thing is certain. Joyce Bowles never changed her story. Despite the ridicule, okay, that you would get obviously in 76. Despite the warnings. She never changed her story. Despite the fear, and the details of her encounter continue to echo through other cases, and they certainly do. And they're across decades. Like, I will give you a quick rundown, right? The Joyce Bowles incident with the silver-suited entity is very, very similar to the Pembrokeshire Broadhaven incident. Or the case with the two children, the Cheshire incident. Okay, two children saw a silver-suited entity in 76, 77, and the Broadhaven incident, when they saw a UFO land in the school, was 1977, silver-suited entity. I could go on, to be honest with you. But perhaps more importantly, if you do like the sort of stories that I tell you, and you do like UFOs, aliens and weird stuff, and if you enjoyed this investigating into one of Britain's strangest UFO cases, make sure to subscribe and join us. Join us for more stories of UFO, aliens and the unexplained, because the truth is still out there but won't be told to you by your government. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week.